amazing.
May we hug next year.
Yeah.
I know.
No, I like
Next year in the shul.
no.
Yeah.
It's like
Who said
glue.
G1103? Oh.
And next year in non-virtual hug land.
Next year on the
Absolutely.
We're in the synagogue.
year
Next year in organic land.
Hi, Mom. I can hear you.
Mayoff.
Hi, Dino.
So many people are here. 277.
Oh, my little
Rebecca, your yoga was so awesome. I told my other yoga friend about it, and so she was like, "Wow." She wants to learn the Kabbalah now and put it into her practice to teach other people. And it's all your fault. All your fault.
Friends, we're about to start in a minute.
Really?
And Haley, if you could text me, one of you, that would be great as we prepare to get started.
This is fun.
On YouTube who are joining us. It's wonderful to have you. We have people from all over the United States and some people from around the world joining us. Let us know where you're from.
Yeah.
Austin.
Austin,
Highlands, North Carolina.
South Dakota,
Wow.
Decatur.
South Dakota. Wow.
the Isle of
Kaddish.
Crows.
Santa.
Yeah, say Sharon.
Ithaca, New York.
Columbus, Ohio. Was here from Boston a minute ago.
Washington, D.C., of course.
I'm still here. You can kind of see me.
Hi, sweetie.
Orlando, Florida.
Auckland, New Zealand.
Wow. Okay.
You win.
So friends, I'm going to invite us.
Welcome from New Zealand.
Wow.
Welcome from New Zealand. That's wonderful.
Three people
Folks,
in Massachusetts, not as romantic as New Zealand.
friends, I'm going to invite us to mute ourselves as we begin our service.
Yadai da dai, yadai da dai, yai da dai dai da dai, yadai da dai, yadai da dai, yai da dai dai da dai, yadai da dai da dai dai dai, yai da dai dai dai. Ya dai da dai da dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai, ya dai da dai, ya dai da dai, ya da dai dai da dai, ya dai da dai, ya dai da dai, ya da dai dai da dai. Ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da da ya da.
We begin this evening's service by lighting a memorial candle this moment. But before we begin, I just want to invite us, as I was greeting folks in the beginning, it's really incredibly wonderful to be able to gather and to have an experience of being able to connect with one another. And so I really want to invite us, as much as we would prefer to be in person, many of us, while others have said this actually works much better for them. So there's learning in this for us as well, that we should lean into this platform. This platform has both limitations and opportunities. And some of the limitations, it can feel particularly leading that we're leading alone. And so nothing creates a sense of community like us praying together, hearing in our minds other people's voices because we see your mouths moving, to be able to look into another person's eyes and to see that connection, to build the sense of community that way. I've encouraged us to use the chat so that we can either offer reflections throughout the service or perhaps individual messages of good yontif and goodwill to one another. It's important for us to be expressive, emotive, so that we don't feel isolated in this form. And also to be able to create the sense of coming on screen when that is at all possible. And folks who are joining us on YouTube, I want to invite you to create a sense of community with one another through your live chat. So to introduce yourselves and make sure that you get the sense of community on the platform that you're using as well. So in our supplements, and hopefully you will find a link in the chat to a machzor. And for those who have a machzor with you on page 73, ask Jane Diamond and Tommy Peterson to light this memorial candle. Okay. The text on page 73.
Wait till we're going to show. They're going to switch the picture to us. There.
Jane and Tommy, if you'll read and light the candle.
We light this candle in the memory of all our loved ones. May their memory be a blessing. We light this candle in the memory of all who have died in the pandemic. May their memory be a blessing.
We light this candle in the memory of all who died because of racial injustice, of anti-Semitism, of transphobia and homophobia, of sexism and domestic violence, and of all those who sought peace, and of those who caused good trouble.
Amen. We find the blessing for our Yom Tov candles. I'd like to invite Susan Birch to light them as Brad leads us in the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehalig ner shel Yom HaKippurim. Amen. And then we continue with the Shehecheyanu. Join me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazeman hazeh. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Susan. Together, friends, we have arrived at Yomah, which means the day. The rabbis referred to Yom Kippur simply as the day. The rabbis of the Talmud indicated that its austerity and its awesomeness did not need anything else except to say this was the day of all days throughout the year. And so there are some years where we need to conjure the kind of drama that the rabbis imagined, to surround ourselves with the symbols of mortality, to inhabit the feeling of vulnerability that our ancestors intended. But sadly, not this year. This year, we know all too well the fragility of life and the fragility of breath. It has been inescapable. We are witnessing the toll that the coronavirus has been taking. We have witnessed the greed that has led to vast income inequality in our country, a criminal justice system that has lost its way, a swelling bigotry that continues to be violently expressed. This year, we are in no need of greater drama to achieve the potency of arriving at the start of this day. We are all living uneasily with uncertainty. The reality of most of our lives is meeting Yom Kippur directly, without any need for extra drama. The Baal Shem Tov, who was no stranger to tumultuous and dangerous times, he believed that at a time such as this, it could be encountered with sacred intention by engaging three spiritual processes. One, to yield to our reality, to see it, to accept it, and to yield to it, and then to discern the choices that are before us. And lastly, to do what we can to sweeten our reality. And so being together is part of that sweetening. The services that we've been using for Yom Kippur, that the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association has created, offers this teaching. On Kol Nidre, we focus to this understanding of what does it mean to yield to our reality. The Baal Shem Tov understood that in difficult times, we must grasp, accept, and surrender, even when our reality is painful. To try to sweeten first leads us to denial and obscures the ability to make the available choices. This is a moment, this is a day to express our awe, our fear, our grief, without letting it define us. We can open up to our grief so that it flows and it keeps us from remaining stuck, so that we can acknowledge the loss but continue to move through it, that we do not need to be resigned to bitterness, that we can engage in the process of letting go. And in the yielding, we can discover what is truly enduring about us. Yom Kippur, met through yielding, assists us in removing the facades, stripping back all of the layers, releasing the lies that we tell so that we can encounter truth. And though it can feel raw or tender, it is where our authenticity and our resilience is found. We take a moment to listen to these words that begin the Kol Nidre process, B'Shiva B'Mala. It is not in your machzor, so we'll listen to it, but you will find Kol Nidre on page 75.
By the authority of all who congregate above and all who congregate on earth, and with permission of the omnipresent one, and by consent of this assembly, we accept into our midst whoever seeks to pray, whether righteous or unrighteous. All shall pray as one community. B'shiva shel ma'ala ובשיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להיפלל עם העבריינים. בשיבה של מעלה ובשיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. בשיבה של מעלה ובשיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
Friends, we take this moment to listen acutely to the words of Kol Nidre. Some of us will choose to stand. Others will choose to sit alertly with ears open, allowing this melody to touch our hearts, recognizing all of the words that we have said, those that we tried to live up to and were unable, those that we knew we were saying and unable to live up to, and those that we don't know, despite our best attempts. We find the Kol Nidre on page 75.
Kol Nidre ve'esarei ushivui ve'charmei ve'konamei ve'kinusei ve'chinuyei Din darna ureish tabana udeacharimena udea sar na al nafshatana miyom kippurim she'avar ad yom kippurim ze haba aleinu letova kulhon icharat navehon kulhon yehon she'aran shevikin shevitin betelin umevutalin lasheririn vilakayamin nidrena la nidre ואסרנה לה יסרה, ושבועתנה לה. שבועות.
We turn to the middle of page 75 as Jerry Cagle and Susan Levy lead this reflection on the words that follow Kol Nidre. Sometimes these are words that we don't pay much attention to, but this year Rabbi Michael Strassfeld believed that these words spoke to this time as he offers his reflection on the power of words to destroy and to create, especially focusing on the word kol, the meaning of
a reflection on all we are.
Kol Nidre.
All the words better left unsaid, but all of them said. Words carelessly cast upon loved ones, friends, and co-workers. Cast across the room and now across Zoom. Like God at creation, we create and shatter worlds with our words. We are stirred by the music of Kol Nidre, powerful and evocative, followed by silence. What can we say? Where do we start doing teshuvah on this solemn day of atonement?
V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Yisrael.
Let us begin by having compassion on all of us, for we are all flawed. And yet we all have tried to do the right thing. We have failed, but also succeeded. We are human.
V'lager hagar b'tocham.
For each of us has a stranger, Hagar, dwelling in our midst, that which seems foreign and troubling, yet lives within each of us imperfect beings. But that all is really part of who we are until we acknowledge that we cannot change.
Ki lechol ha'am bishgaga.
But then you realize that all is not how you want to be. You don't want to say hurtful things. You don't want to be envious. You are acting bishgaga, unintentionally or unconsciously, or even unwisely, but most often not maliciously. This Kol Nidre is an opportunity to make out of the many aspects of who we are a healthier whole. E pluribus unum, out of many one, taking the broken pieces amid the whole pieces and bring the allness of ourselves together.
Slach na ba'avon ha'am hazeh ki godel chasdecha.
How do we move on into this new year? By forgiving the misdeeds of all of us with unmeasured love, and thereby lifting us up from old patterns which prevent us from choosing wisely and open-heartedly. As the merciful has asked us to repeat God's words,
Salachti kidvarecha.
I have forgiven you and even me. Therefore, we recite the Shehakianu for this opportunity to begin anew again.
Let us all recite the Shehakianu together. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. Thank you, Jerry and Susan. Tonight, I would like to invite our new interim executive director to say some words of welcome. It is my pleasure to welcome him to his first Yom Kippur services with us. Aaron Berger joined us at the end of July in the swing of planning for High Holy Days, an effort that started for us in earnest in early May. We are grateful for his expertise, his embrace of our mission, and his desire to deepen our impact. And so it's my pleasure to welcome him. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Rabbi. While I am still new here to the CBH family, I value the activism, justice, the spiritual solace that CBH provides. I have been empowered by all that CBH offers, from its outreach efforts to feed the hungry, to its incredible music program, to the growing following of Mindful Moments. What humbles me is that CBH provides equal access to all that the high holidays offer without fees, without tickets, without fundraisers. Truly, there is a seat for everyone at this table. For our members, I want to say thank you for your support. For our visitors from around the world, I will hope you feel welcomed here. May our home be your home. Please enjoy this video that's featuring a long-term member at CBH. I hope that her story and your experience will motivate you to consider making a gift to CBH or joining us as a member. But again, most importantly, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Aaron. We're about to hear words from Rebecca Staple-Wax, who has been a dear soul since I met her when I became the rabbi 21 years ago. And she has been such a sheer inspiration as she continues to lead, to steer, and grow Sojourn, the Southern Jewish Resource Network for Gender and Sexual Diversity. She has taken this program in new directions, changing the lives of so many others. And in listening to her words tonight, it warms me to know that some of her nourishment is found right here in her Beit Haverim community.
And I sat down in a pew and I took a breath and I said, I'm home. When I walked in at the age of 25 into CBH, there was a spirit and a camaraderie and a way in which people saw the world that I saw finally, and feeling like I'm in a community is so important to me. When I think of social justice, I think of repairing the world, tikkun olam, and that we are responsible for doing our part in making that happen. And so when we participate in Martin Luther King Jr. Days or in Pride, or when refugees have been targeted, or people who are Muslim or transgender, we don't shy away from it. We have incredible leadership that is innovative and creative and fearless. The reason why CBH is so important to me is that I wasn't needing anymore to choose between being in a relationship with a woman and my Jewish faith. I was brought up thinking that I could love anyone and should love strongly, and then I came out and I was told that wasn't okay by a Jewish community. So when I got to CBH, I was welcomed and honored and celebrated for being just who I was. It's true, and it is real, and it is possible, and it is life-saving for me and so many other people that I could now breathe. I have been a member at CBH for 24 years. I am married to Jennifer, and we have 2 kids, Caleb and Oren. When both of our children were born, CBH was there to celebrate. And when we weren't sure whether or not one of our children was going to come to fruition, there were members in this community that ensured that we had hope. and I don't know what I would do without CBH. When we've been asked to give at the $252 level at high holidays, although my wife and I both work for nonprofits and make modest salaries, and thank goodness we have jobs, this year is no different. We plan to give more, just like all the other years, because that's our level of commitment to CBH, and we ask you to join us to give at the level of commitment that you have to our synagogue.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashuva, V'nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Please join me for the Baruch Hu on page 76. To the level that you want to stand and rise, please do so, or you can elevate in a seated position, but please join me. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
We continue this evening to an alternative Asher Bivaro. And I don't think it would be a High Holy Day without the poetry of Alan Sugar. And so I'd like to invite him to read his poem that he wrote for us this year, Yom Tov. Welcome, Alan. Good Yontif.
Good Yontif. Thank you so much, Rabbi Josh. This is called Yom Tov. It all goes on and on, never ends, sky above, and all the love we feel. And as we live and give our gifts to friends, we tend to wounds that take some time to heal. We make mistakes and also make amends. The heart contains the hurt that we conceal. The sun comes up and all too soon descends. But what remains is good and true and real. It all goes round. The dawn with darkness blends. The elements converge and they congeal. And in the ground on which all life depends, we sow the seeds like gems no one can steal. We greet each other at the end of day, and all the light we need, we give away. Good Yontif.
Good Yontif. Thank you, Alan. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. Ay da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da. Baruch ata Adonai, Ha'ma'ari v'harabim. Amen.
Amen. We find the Shema on page 77 in the middle of our machzor. There is a difference between fragile and being vulnerable. We close our eyes when we say the Shema so that we might feel a deeper connection. But it is interesting to note that by closing our eyes, we make ourselves more vulnerable. Vulnerability is a way to sense the oneness and to remember that this very act of saying the Shema, from it we gain strength. We are reminded that we are connected, that we are bound together in that oneness, that we are vulnerable but not fragile. In fact, when we say the Shema together, we are expressing how powerful we truly are.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Voed ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושינתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
On Kol Nidre, we reveal ourselves in our fullest humanity, humbled, vulnerable, and perfect, as we surrender in awe to the reality of our lives. How can we not ask for a sense of protection and peace in this most tender of moments? Spread over each of us your shelter of peace. Just as we take collective responsibility for our misdeeds, help us, dear one, to connect to one another so that we understand that our compassionate actions weave the canopy of wholeness, just as we are seeking shelter underneath it. Protect us during this pandemic and guide us to take the precautions to protect others by the sacred acts of cleansing our hands and masking in your divine presence, reflected in the encounter of another person. Guide us in your wise counsel so that we cultivate endurance and discern better choices for our own well-being and for that of others. Comfort us in all of the losses that we are experiencing. Shield us from the isolation of sheltering in place, such that we feel the embrace from community even when we are apart. Let the night sky, with its canopy of constellations, remind us that our prayers and hopes, our yearnings are reflected in the expanse as that Sukkot Shalom, that canopy of peace. May we feel its enfolding connection. Source of truth, our reality is difficult, yet we have arrived on this Yom Kippur ready to face another year with open-heartedness. Let us know grace and mercy as we are guarded in our goings and our comings, and in our sheltering in place for life and for peace. May you spread your shelter of peace over us, over the Jewish people and our loved ones and the entire world. Let us say, Amen. We find the Hashkivenu on page 78 as we listen to our chorus and this beautiful video.
Ashki
We turn to page 78 as we chant Ki Vayom Hazeh.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תתארו.
So I ask for forgiveness because I read somebody's reading, and that happens as we move along. But I wanted to see if I could ask Robert Brown to read Tender Moments on the middle of page 78.
Thank you, Rabbi. Tender moments. We are walking away from who we are. Well, we are moving toward who we know we are. We are finding no space to breathe in the chaos while we are holding chaos lovingly with our breath. We are not knowing where we are going while we are trusting a place known to us. We are lost in finding what art is while we are found in ourselves being lost.
Amen. Good Yontif Anna, good Yontif Brown. Thank you. We continue as we take some silence in that place of moving into being lost. Just going to invite us to take a moment and close our eyes and allow ourselves to feel that shelter of peace to enfold us so that when we feel lost, that we can turn to the protection of our community and those around us to extend the sense of wholeness and peace we need. We take the silence together. So friends, we connect our private prayers, our meditations with that of a prayer for healing. We take a moment to put in the chat here on Zoom or in the live chat on YouTube the names of those that we are asking for refuah shlema, a healing of body, of mind, and spirit. I invite you to put their names in as we listen to the chorus sing this Mishaberach. So friends, I want to have the opportunity to offer some words of reflection and Torah to you this evening. And it felt really important that at the risk of giving the same sermon, Devar, twice, that I reflect a little bit more about hope, to be able to drill down a little bit more and to invite us to think about this concept through these entire High Holy Days. So if you feel that this is repetitive, my apologies from the start, but I think these are messages I know that I needed to hear, and so I hope that they're the message you need to hear as well. So what would it feel like to hear an invitation to practice active hope every time that we become aware of how the Yom Kippur liturgy and rituals remind us of our own vulnerability, our death, and mortality? On Rosh Hashanah, I extended an invitation to practice hope with me in this coming year. And on Yom Kippur, I want to do the same. Will you commit to practice active hope with me in this new year? But before you say yes, we must understand that to make this commitment necessitates a deeper relationship with uncertainty. After studying many sources about hope, particularly hope as a practice, one essential common thread is that uncertainty creates the conditions for an active hope. Yom Kippur itself amps up the existential questions that on other days we like to keep safely locked away. And Yom Kippur does this so that we feel the urgency to make the essential changes. Yom Kippur reminds us that life is unpredictable, so that we must repair what we can now. Our lives are finite, and so we must do teshuvah in the ways that are possible. So thinking about this, we could approach Yom Kippur as a spiritual laboratory, discovering what our relationship is with uncertainty, since there is urgency to embrace uncertainty in a way that leads to greater courage in the face of this upcoming election. Our natural response to ambiguity is to retreat. But on Yom Kippur, we can practice leaving behind our certainty and accepting the spacious and unsteady nature of not knowing. It is an important practice because our intolerance of uncertainty can lead to anxiety and depression. If we can bravely move through our fears and anxieties of letting go of control, we will confront how comfort and security are illusions that don't serve us. Instead, we will also find ourselves at that choice point of active hope. Shortly before the Georgia primary, I witnessed this very thing on a late morning run. I took a new route up Freedom Parkway. Catching my breath at a stoplight, I saw a woman in her 70s standing alone, leaning on a cane with her left hand and holding up a sign urging people to vote with her right. More than 6 feet away, I waved and I said, "Thank you." And she said, "Don't thank me, honey. This is what's saving my life. The world is upside down right now. Being out here is the least that I can do for my grandbabies." In the face of an uncertain world, vulnerably encouraging people to vote was how this one grandmother was transforming her anxiety into the future, her anxiety of the future into a present that was bearable. And as I ran home, I realized that I had just witnessed the recreation of a well-known Talmud story. Honi, the circle maker, passed an elderly man planting a carob sapling, which is a tree that does not fruit for many decades. Skeptical, Honi asked him if he thought that he would be alive in 70 years from now to see that tree bear fruit. The man replied, "No, it's unlikely. However, I found carob trees in the world when I was born. Just as my predecessors planted those trees for me, so too do I plant these for my children." One of Judaism's responses to uncertainty is to place oneself in a chain of people who have preceded us, recognizing that what was done for us, and then making choices that establish a livable future for the following generation. That gives our lives meaning and impact beyond our death. And we can know it because all we need to do is to become aware of all of the things that have been done for us. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made this even more explicit. He taught that if you are holding a sapling in your hand and someone calls to you, come quickly, the Messiah is here, first finish planting the tree and then go greet the Messiah. He expects that in the face of uncertainty, that we continue to act even when there is somebody who is there supposedly to save us. In other words, our saving acts are more important than a savior. It is not surprising that such a declaration would come from Rabbi Yochanan, because after the destruction of the Second Temple and the Jews' deadly expulsion from Jerusalem, he led the reinvention of Jewish community in that time. When he realized the grave danger that Jerusalem was facing, he took incredible risks, such as escaping the city in a coffin to negotiate with Vespasian for the community's future. His embracing of uncertainty is a defining moment for Jewish tradition to this very day. I doubt he knew the impact that he would have millennia later. But this is the power of choosing hope in the face of uncertainty. This emphasis on uncertainty is one that Rebecca Solnit, author of Hope in the Dark, also celebrates. She writes that hope locates itself in the premises that we don't know what will happen. And in that spaciousness of uncertainty is room to act. When you recognize uncertainty, you recognize that you may be able to influence the outcome, you alone, or you in concert with a few dozen or several million others. Hope is an embrace of the unknown and knowable, an alternative to the certainty of both optimists and pessimists. Optimists think it will all be fine without our involvement. Pessimists think the opposite. Both excuse themselves from acting. It is the belief that what we do matters, even though how and when it may matter, and who and what it may impact are not things that we can know beforehand. So if I get her right, she is saying that even in hope, uncertainty remains. Isn't that maddening? Even more so is the encouragement to embrace our own lack of control. With the state of the world as it is, I am someone who does not encounter uncertainty as the whimsical feeling of an open, spacious place, a field that invites us to run in any direction. Instead, it feels like navigating a restricted cavern or like trying to run in a bouncy house. It takes courage to be present to our fears and to consider the risks of the bumpiness ahead. Living through this pandemic and under the threat of an ever-growing authoritarianism makes it seem like every day for us is training us to walk with uncertainty. Think about it. Just since Rosh Hashanah, we have lost our beloved Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the frightening announcement of her replacement. Over 205,000 deaths, we have learned, due to the COVID-19 virus. Justice was not served this week in Breonna Taylor's case, inflaming righteous protest. And our president revealed that should he lose, he will seek a way to invalidate the election results. So no wonder denial or comfort or despair seem like viable options, because it feels like too much. That was 1 week. Our survival, though, depends on not shying away from this discomfort. Rather, we must acknowledge the extent of our pain and our fear, and then discern the best course of action. We are here as Jews today because the people before us did not let their terrors of their day stop them from acting. Buddhist nun Pema Chodron shares a stark and confrontational teaching, but one that I've held close to my heart. She writes, only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. I'm going to repeat that. Only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found within us. It is all about letting go of everything, she writes. This idea of annihilation is terrifying, but yet when we awaken to the futility of denial, when our very survival is at stake, we will encounter who we truly are and what we are capable of doing. And from this place of sheer vulnerability, we learn that our strength lies in how we contend with reality, no matter how unpleasant. It takes great spiritual depth to subject ourselves to an annihilation of our ego so that we may discover our own power. It feels paradoxical. Most of us work our entire lives to avoid that very feeling. And yet this is exactly how I have felt these last few months. I have needed to keep letting go of plans, of expectations, of my attachments, of false ideas of who I think I am, just like most of you. Being faced with taking far-reaching risks, but not just for myself, but those that impact so many others, including all of you who have gathered, is profoundly real and is annihilating on a regular basis. I am humbled. This pandemic has been kicking my ass. Pardon my Hebrew. For me, embracing uncertainty has been nothing less than a daily humility practice. You see, I started 2020 with not just a plan, but with a calendar where literally every single day was accounted for, because I needed to show our board that taking several weeks of unpaid leave to write, to teach, and pursue some passion projects could be attainable. Every single day was declared, whether it was a work day, a day off, a writing day, a teaching day, or a holiday. I plan to create and teach a new spiritual direction program with a colleague at Hebrew Union College for spiritual directors. I had writing projects, speaking engagements, and a plan to rebuild relationships outside of work to address my very own isolation. I was so intentional. And then came the pandemic. And what I thought was certain was really just a sandcastle on the shore, washed away with waves of reality. I quickly accepted that this was not going to be just a pivot. It was a full-blown annihilation. Who will live and who will die became real. Will our synagogue survive became real. How does one protest the racial injustice and the extreme bigotry in a pandemic became real. The questions were unceasing. How to lead effectively when making decisions that could have life and death consequences, or decisions that would deeply disappoint and alienate people, was humbling. There are folks who have not gathered with us tonight because Zoom does not work for them as a platform. And Yom Kippur has become a deeply disappointing reminder of their aloneness and isolation. That is humbling to me. How do I accompany people in their losses and their anxieties and fears effectively without my own despairing? What if I make mistakes? And so I found myself bumping up against these and so many other hard questions caused by this unpleasant reality. And by accepting my limitations, some days I felt so drained and exhausted that I wondered in my head, had I contracted the virus? Or was I just Zoom fatigued? Some days I was unrecognizably irritable. Who was I? I hated myself. Humbling, accepting, letting go, grieving, choosing, humbling, accepting, grieving, choosing, letting go. This is how I managed uncertainty and how on better days I'm able to practice active hope. Honestly, it's been really hard. Bringing compassionate awareness to our reality when we feel this way can help with the unwanted news that kept and keeps unfolding. I created what I called spiritual scaffolding for Beit Haverim and for me daily and weekly with consistent mindfulness practices. Meditation, chant, running, and prayer have been my lifelines. This scaffolding has allowed me to accept the unpleasant reality more rapidly so that I could begin to make decisions with less fear, that I could clean up my messes with less shame and keep moving forward. I seek to cultivate my ability to be with the reality of the moment, even at its most discomforting, and supporting others in trying to achieve the same. The other approach to navigating uncertainty, though, was knowing that I couldn't do it alone. I created 2 online communities with thousands of clergy who are navigating uncertainty together with compassionate solidarity. We together have witnessed each other's struggles. We have offered support, found like-minded approaches. We've challenged one another, and we have shared resources. And instead of a cutthroat territorial approach that I sometimes find in clergy circles, I discovered that the more real and vulnerable somebody was, the greater the support and affirmation they received. How beautiful is that? Belonging to community, friends, will help. And my wish is that CBH serve in similar ways for all of you. Whatever ambiguity we are experiencing now, our foreseeable future is even more frighteningly uncertain. I wish that was not our reality. Trust me, I am not alone in saying that our democracy, our planet, our human and civil rights that we hold dear are in the balance. Our Yom Kippur liturgy supports waking up and urgency. So we should use this sacred time to let go of what was or what we wish were true and accept this moment, this now, the humbling nature of our reality. Because friends, if Yom Kippur is a drill, what we heard from the president this week is an alarm. Uncertainty is knocking at the door and setting up camp on our doorstep. And so if we invite the uncertainty in, we can begin to think about the actions we take. And then I truly believe we will discover what is indestructible in us so that we together can choose hope. Krista Tippett reminds us that hope is a choice that becomes a practice, that becomes a spiritual muscle memory. It is a renewable resource for moving through life as it is, not as we wish to be. And so I want Beit Haverim to be a source that has us train our spiritual muscle memory of hope. When I realized the news about the detention center not providing proper COVID-19 precautions to the immigrants detained, nor to their staff, and that women shared how they received hysterectomies without informed consent, that center was in Georgia, I was outraged. Our days of repentance were about to begin, and I simply knew that I had to go down to Osilla. That the echoes of genocide of our own Jewish people haunted me. I knew I could not live with myself if I did not make atonement for our country and offer witness. Organizing a small Tashlik ritual of witness, of repentance and prayer, and facing uncertainty, of demonstrating at Irwin was my way of practicing active hope for me. Just like the grandmother urging people to vote, I did this to save my very life, to make my present moment inhabitable. Will it have an impact? I don't know. But choices like this have kept me going for the past 6 months. As I let things fall away, I know I am also putting down foundation for the future. For me, it is a better option than despair. What is powerful about hanging in with the discomfort of uncertainty is that if you make it through choosing hope, you are saving your own life. During the next 25 hours, give yourself the time to reflect. What do you need to remain present through the uncertainty? What practices sustain you, humble you, and uplift you? Who are the people in your communities that you can ask for loving and mutual support? And who are the people that you can offer it to? Rebecca Solnit reminds us that hope is an axe that we use to break down the door in an emergency. Maybe it is an axe that we need to use. Or maybe it's a shovel asking us, for whom do we plant trees for the future? Either way, friends, this is your life you are saving. You pick the tool, but make sure you choose one. And remember, you are not alone. Congregation Beit Haverim is a place where we can build that muscle memory of active hope. Good Yantif.
כל העולם כולו גשצר מאוד, גשצר מאוד, גשצר מאוד, כל העולם כולו גשצר מאוד, גשצר מאוד. והעיקר לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר לא לפחד כלל.
I'd like to invite our past president, Mackenzie Wren, to offer some announcements this evening.
Hi, everyone. Good Yantif. My name is Mackenzie Wren, and I am the immediate past president of Congregation Bet Haverim. Whew. It's always a time to breathe after a devar like that. Thank you, Rabbi Josh, and thank you for all that you witness and hold and inspire us to do. So now I get to do the announcements. So on behalf of the board of CBH, I'm so very happy to welcome so many friends from around Atlanta, around the country, and even from around the world. I see you, New Zealand, and to our virtual Kol Nidre. We are so honored that you have chosen to gather with us on this somber day of reflection. Preparation for high holidays is always a labor of love. This year, however, gave us opportunities to be even more creative as we redefined what it meant to worship together. And this would not have been possible without our incredibly innovative rabbis, our talented staff, and the masses of dedicated volunteers. And to all who worked to make these high holidays meaningful, our sincere thanks for your truly tremendous efforts. I want to remind y'all that this evening's service had no fee and there was no ticket to buy. And that's always our practice at CBH, not just because we are sheltering in place and sheltering in peace during COVID, but because we never charge for services. And every one of you is welcome here just as you are. But I would be remiss not to remind you that, as Rebecca Staple-Wax said, you are welcomed and even encouraged to make a donation. Tomorrow, we have a full day of reflection and learning, including service for older children, plus additional teen and children's programming. We have our Torah service at 1:45, a contemplative chant and meditation, avodah, at 3:30. And in the evening, we'll gather before the open ark on Zoom at 6 o'clock and move into Nila and Havdalah. Please, as always, visit High Holy Days Central at Congregation Bet Haverim to see the full schedule. And may you have a meaningful fast or a meaningful observance in the way that is right for you. Gemar Hatima Tova.
Gemar Tov, Mackenzie. In some ways, I feel like I do this to you often, so my apologies. But I appreciate all that you represent and your way of helping us breathe through what are challenging moments. So friends, we step into a more intimate part of the service, our confessionals, our slichot prayers. We begin on page 78 as we ask to be remembered for life, recognizing that life indeed is vulnerable. We turn to page 78 for Zochreinu L'chaim. We continue on page 79 with Ya'aleh.
Ya'aleh tachanunenu mi'erev yavo shavatenu miboker v'yeraher inunenu ad ha'arev יעלה קולנו מערב יבוא צדקתנו מבוקר ויראה פדיוננו עד ערב. יעלה עינוינו מערב יבוא סליחתנו מבוקר ויראה נאקתנו עד ערב. יעלה ענקתנו מערב יבוא אליך מבוקר ויראה אלינו עד ערב.
Friends, I'm going to ask us to read this prayer that we just chanted together in the English. May our supplications ascend from this evening, and may our cry from the morning, and may our songs appear till the evening. May our voice ascend from the evening, and may our righteousness come from the morning, and may our redemption appear till evening. May our affliction ascend from the evening, and may our pardon come from the morning, and may our groaning appear till evening. May our sighing ascend from the evening, and may it come before you from the morning, and may its effect appear to us till evening. Amen. On Yom Kippur, we face the reality that we have gone astray and that we have caused harm to ourselves and to others. We believe that absolution is possible with the process of teshuvah, repentance and repair. We pray for mercy. In the 18th century ethical text, Mesilat Yesharim, there is an understanding that mercy is that we do not face the full consequences of our actions, so that we may be given the possibility to repent and to subdue our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclinations. How we approach this opportunity differs from year to year. When we say these litany of sins and misdeeds, do we strike our heart with a fist in regret and chastisement? Or do we open our hand, recognizing that we indeed are gentle with ourselves and are sorry? Some years, I believe we need a strong reminder that repair is within our reach, that responding with rigor, a clenched fist pounding our heart is the alert that we need. But some years that we need a vigorous response to serve as the splash of water, to wake us up to do better, to realign ourselves to our greatest values. But yet there are other years that we are all too aware and focused on our shortcomings, that our shame even becomes an obstacle to effective repair. We may not literally beat up ourselves more than we have. Instead, the opportunity is to provide ourselves with the grace itself. And so instead, we can start the healing that leads to the reorienting ourselves to the acceptance of who we are and finding our way. And so as we approach these next two prayers, the Ashamnu and the Achet, the prayers that enumerate these lists of our sins, take a moment to understand what you need this year to support your transformation of sin into that of forgiveness and even of merit. We find the Ashamnu on page 80.
Ay 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 Ashamnu Bagadnu Gazalnu Dibarnu dofi Ay 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 Evinu Vehirshanu Zadnu Hamasnu טפלנו שקר.
טלפנו שקר.
איי 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 יעצנו רע.
יעצנו רע.
כיזבנו.
כיזבנו.
לחצנו.
לחצנו.
מרדנו.
מרדנו.
ניאצנו.
ניאצנו.
שררנו.
שררנו.
אבינו.
אבינו.
פשענו.
פשענו.
שררנו.
שררנו.
קישינו עורף.
קישינו עורף.
איי 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 רשענו.
רשענו.
שיחתנו.
שיחתנו.
תיעבנו.
תיעבנו.
טעינו.
טעינו.
תיתנו.
תיתנו.
איי 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 איי.
We find the Alchet in page 81. We'll read the English, and then we will chant the line in Hebrew, Elohai Slichot. Judaism urges us to honestly assess our lives and to gauge our actions. Yom Kippur reminds us that we must take collective responsibility, whether we have directly or indirectly created the circumstances of our world. We have the need to repair and renew the world in which we live. This takes a balance of honesty, of compassion, and wholeheartedness to witness and to take responsibility for what is both painful and what is hopeful. There is much more we could have done to make ourselves, our communities, and our world a better place, and much to appreciate in the ways that we have. This year, we bring awareness to our community's missteps, and then a larger focus on the pandemic and the racial injustice that have plagued us. So first, we'll hear the slights that we have done in our ritual at Beit Haverim, and then we expand them to larger circles. We recognize that where we've been a part of the problem, that we can also be a part of the solution. Where we have failed, we seek forgiveness, and where we have made strides, we offer encouragement.
ועל כולם, ועל כולם, אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
For the sins we have committed by holding unrealistic expectations of ourselves and others. For the sins we have committed by drinking too much. For the sins we have committed by fighting with loved ones, friends, and community members. For the sins we have committed by not communicating enough or being present to loved ones and friends. For the sins we have committed by losing our patience with people. By forgetting important milestones like birthdays and anniversaries when people needed us. For the sins we have committed by not following through on our word, by not returning library books on time, by not expressing gratitude to people who have helped us. For the sins we have committed by not listening and interrupting. For the sins we have committed through gossip and harmful speech. For the sins we have committed by being less than our better selves, by being tactless, by being too self-involved and ignoring the needs of others, by not seeking to repair fractured relationships. for the sins we have committed by not visiting loved ones before they died, for the sins we have committed by not caring for the ill, for the sins we have committed by withdrawing from the community, by wasting food, by not attending Shiva or sending condolences, for the sins of not wearing our masks, by protesting without advocacy, by not protesting enough, for the sins we have committed by expressing Jewishness more like Larry David and less like the Baal Shem Tov, for the sins we have committed by not donating to Congregation Beth Haverim, for the sins we have committed by failing to follow through on commitments to CBH, for the sins we have committed by hardening my heart to other members of CBH, for the sins we have committed by not volunteering enough.
ועל כולם, ועל כולם, אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
Let us take responsibility for our misdeeds in response to COVID-19. For the sins we have committed by our delaying to act, for the sins we have committed by listening to only what we want to hear, for the sins we have committed by our false sense of invulnerability, for the sins we have committed by placing our own needs over the well-being of the larger community, for the sins we have committed by valuing our own comfort over disciplined quarantine and social distancing, for the sins we have committed by not caring for and protecting the most vulnerable, for the sins we have committed by only being focused on our losses and not on our blessings, for the sins we have committed by not enabling our society to adequately protect our public health and healthcare workers, for the sins we have committed by allowing isolation and fear to prevent us from reaching out when we have been in need, for the sins we have committed by creating opportunities that entice people into harm's way.
ועל כולם, ועל כולם, אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. I think, Tamara, your mic needs to be turned on.
Let us take responsibility for misdeeds in response to racial justice, for the sins that we have committed by declaring racism is in the past, for the sins that we have committed by mistaking progress for resolution, for the sins that we have committed by ignoring the risks and dangers that people of color experience every day, navigating systems that were designed for white folks, for the sins that we have committed by not risking comfort and safety to seek racial justice, for the sins that we have committed by seeking the comfort of relationships over the discomfort of dismantling systems of inequity, for the sins that we have committed by embracing tolerance over the work of anti-racism, and for the sins that we have committed by becoming numb or thinking we are powerless in the face of police brutality, mass incarceration, and systemic poverty, for the sins that we have committed by engaging in purity politics rather than in coalition building, for the sin that we have committed by expecting Jews of color to choose between identities and communities, and for the sins that we have committed by not repairing what can and must be repaired.
ועל כולם, ועל כולם, אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
We find B'Sefer Chaim that we ask that we be sealed in the book of life on page 83.
בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה. נזכר וניכתב לפניך, אנחנו בכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ושלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום. Amen.
Amen. We find the prayer for the end of hiding on page 83 in our machzor or in the chat. In thinking about the prayer for the end of hiding and its impact that it has had on our community beyond just those who founded the community of gays and lesbians, but really the ways that inviting people to live authentic lives is very much inviting people to take a moment and to understand that the closet itself is a tool of certainty. It is a way of protecting ourselves from the world, shielding our own authentic self, and that those of us who have taken risks to live authentically, even in the face of challenge or despair, oppression and bigotry, we find that our lives have spiritual meaning. And I believe that very much it has allowed us to be more true to our mission and to what we want to accomplish in the world. I think it's why it has touched so many straight folks, is this invitation to actually move away from some of the ways the mainstream encourages comforts and encourages a sense of certainty, and rather brings the teachings from the margins and allows that those of us who live our lives all the time with less certainty have a sense of energy and aliveness in making these choices. The chat was going very quickly after my devar, so I didn't get to see all of it, but people were talking about balancing safety and security, and there are some real decisions to be made that are honest and true about not taking unwise risks. But friends, there are so many people who don't have those choices at all, who live their lives full out, whether they want to or not. And I want to say that many times, an idea of what we think safety or security is a form of a closet. It is something that holds us back. Now, each and every one of us have to make that decision for ourselves. It's not a place for us to judge one another, but it wouldn't be Yom Kippur if we didn't have that conversation to ask ourselves, are we not taking risks that we could? Are we not learning from this prayer to live authentically our mission and our purpose? Each one of us gets to make that decision, but each one of us first must ask ourselves the question. So when we read this prayer tonight, I invite us to hold that question as we say these words. Please join me. As LGBTQ Jews, we are aware of the loss of integrity we suffer due to pressures of the larger society. We often feel forced into a dishonest presentation of ourselves to ourselves and others. The LGBTQ individuals who feel they must pretend to be something that they are not. The Jews who feel they must be alienated from their tradition and community to win larger acceptance. Both are victims of a theft of identity and integrity committed by the sexual, gender identifying, or religious majority. Creator of the universe, we ask that our hiding draw to an end, that we no longer feel we have to pretend to promise falsely, to renounce ourselves, and that our fullest creative expression as Jews and as lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and queer people be among the blessings you bestow upon us. Amen. We find the Aleinu on page 84. I invite us to rise in spirit or in body. Please join us in chanting this prayer.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שנתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We find our Mourner's Kaddish on page 84. I ask those of us who are grieving a loved one to write their names in the chat. If you weren't able to join us for Yizkor and you want to include the name of a loved one that is on your mind that you carry into the season, please do so as well. Those of you on YouTube, please add the names of those that you are grieving and mourning tonight as well. And let our prayers of consolation surround one another as we affirm that even in loss, it is still good to bring memory and legacy alive so that we too can live. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. And we'll wait just a moment as people continue to add those names, and then we'll join together in this prayer. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, bi'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, b'galav v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevorach le'olam omei almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen. Please be seated. Reb Nachman of Bratslav, who lived in tumultuous political and personal times, was born in the city of Uman shortly after Cossack rebels occupied the city. He lived through the death of his first wife, and he saw the death of 4 of his 8 children. And then he struggled to what was ultimately his own demise with tuberculosis. He died before the age of 40, all of that at such a young age. But it is from this well of grief that the awareness of needing to navigate fear on life's narrow bridge is how we can endure uncertainty. Imagined that if he had ceased or retreated to comfort, instead of plumbing the depth of his own experience, his impact, which continues unto this day, would have been stopped or stemmed. His way of dealing with fear was through meditation, a speaking to God out loud in conversation, that kind of meditation, sometimes gently, sometimes yelling. And his willingness to lead with a broken heart meant that his message impacted thousands in his time and millions beyond. In such brokenness, he sought wholeness through acts of repair. he believed that if we understand that we can destroy, that we can also repair. And that is our work during these high holy days. We find the words imata ma'amin. If we believe that we can destroy, we must believe we can repair, on page 85.
אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין, תאמין שיכולים לתקן. אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין, תאמין שיכולים לתקן. אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין, תאמין שיכולים לתקן. אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין, תאמין שיכולים לתקן. אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין שיכולים לתקן, תאמין שיכולים לתקן. אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין, תאמין שיכולים לתקן. אם אתה מאמין שיכולים לקלקל, תאמין, תאמין שיכולים לתקן.
Friends, I'm going to invite us to all go onto gallery view at this moment. As you heard me mention in my devar, I'm going to invite people to mute themselves. As you heard me speak in my devar, that we have been planning our High Holy Day services since the very beginning of May, really right after Passover, the end of April in some ways. And it is just incredibly powerful to be here in this moment with all of you, to take a moment to be able to see all who have gathered, this ingathering of members who have come from far and wide to be able to be with us. It perhaps is one of the most powerful ways that this platform has brought us together, that we can actually be in several states, some of us in different countries, and be here together. And so I just wanted to appreciate that there was something about wanting to hold this container that felt incredibly important to all of those who helped make these holy days possible. And so I'm incredibly grateful to everyone, including you, who are part of what makes Yom Kippur such a powerful and meaningful time. You know, our tradition when we gather in person is to try to leave in silence. And so I want to give us a little bit of a moment to say some of our goodbyes before I offer a final meditation and we listen to one last prayer that inviting us to kind of take into our sleep and do its work within the sacred chambers of our hearts and our souls, allowing us to open up tomorrow. And so while you do that, I'm going to perhaps bore you a little bit before I get to the meditation with some thoughts about fasting. But please take a moment to privately or publicly say goodnight, since we will be leaving and ending in silence, and going to ask at the end of the video that we even kind of leave just that openness for that meditation. Despite having a lot of isolation, I want us to have that kind of retreat into our own self, knowing that we have what it takes to comfort and be present and true with ourselves. But so what I want to say about those of us who may be fasting is that our tradition ultimately was one where people fasted sometimes twice a week, every week, and certainly at least once a month. There are many minor fast days throughout the tradition. And so fasting was a spiritual practice that was regularly taken on. And so when expanding a regular fast day, which typically is from sunrise to sunset, or a 12-hour fast, and move that into a 25-hour fast, was not something that was such an ordeal. In fact, it actually made it more cleansing. that when you participate in that kind of fast regularly, but when you do a fast only once a year, and you think that it's about enduring a great sense of discomfort at the cost or the expense of your ability to pay attention to what is going on within you, I think we all make a grave mistake, that it is far better for us to actually take on the practice of eating simply and sparingly, to drink water if we can, but to pay attention and to fast from the other things that Yom Kippur asks us to, like the news or our cell phones or from daily distractions, and really invite that sense of deep reflection. It is about the reflection. It is about the spiritual nature of the day. It is not about toughing something out in a way that brings misery. It is a practice that brings a heightened sense of awareness. And so again, it's for each one of us to claim whether that is something that will bring that awareness. So I invite you to think that. I'm going to offer you this final reflection and meditation as we start to wind down our good nights and our goodbyes. We have the opportunity to join together tomorrow. And there's a midrash. It's a legend that is based on Genesis, that there once was a man who was on a journey where he discovered a beautiful palace. But as he began to look more clearly, he began to see that this palace was afire. Looking all around, he sought somebody out to extinguish the flames. Unable to find anyone, he was puzzled. Someone must own the palace. Someone must be its caretaker. Who is tending to this palace on fire? The Midrash, Jewish legend, tells us the seeker was Avraham, the father of the Jewish people. And the palace was the world herself. The flames represented all the ways that even in Abraham's time, the world was out of control, that things felt akilter and out of balance. Confused, Abraham sought somebody else to take care of the fire. Someone must be responsible. Someone must extinguish the chaotic flames of a world on fire. An owner, a caretaker, but to no avail, until he began to reflect in his search, and he heard the Creator, the owner of the palace, calling, "I am the caretaker. Go forth, lech lecha." Abraham hears the call, and he leaves the comfort of his home, and he steps into the unknown, and not just any unknown, but a chaotic, troubled world on fire. Abraham embraces uncertainty and responds to taking greater risk than he has ever taken before by leaving his safe shelter, by saying the words, Hineni, here I am. And so in any or all the ways that we hear this call to extinguish the flames, we too have the opportunity to hear the question, who will put out the fire? And we have the opportunity to offer our response, Hineni, here I am.